And something I found quite interesting is most of the participants taking part are strangers, and to take part in the project, it involves having a conversation with yourself about what the individual struggles with.
Yeah.
So participants have to be quite vulnerable with you and open up about something they struggle with.
Yeah.
In your opinion, why do we feel more comfortable opening up to strangers as opposed to those close to us?
I feel like the fact that you don't know the person can massively help, because there's no judgment there. So say if it's a family member or a co-worker, for example, you might have reservations about telling people your deepest, darkest thoughts or your vulnerabilities as well. So I feel like when people don't, all they know is I'm a photographer and I'm doing this project, it's like it's like there's a reason, for one, there's a reason to speak about mental health, because that's what I'm putting down on the table. So it's like already we're like, that's almost a taboo in society, where people think, not everyone, but a proportion of society will think it's something you shouldn't speak about, it's something behind closed doors. Whereas I'm promoting it and saying, you know, this project's about, I would say, embracing it, but also I think it's more important speaking about it and sharing it with people. And I feel, because that person doesn't know me, it's easier to do that. And I feel like as well in doing that, this is only from maybe my perception of this. Whenever I speak about anything that's in my mind, that's a weight on my mind. If I talk about it, it's a weight off my mind. Yeah. It's a really unusual thing where you might think speaking about it, there is a fear because you don't want to be judged. But if you tell the right person, it's a massive lift off your shoulders. One of the things with this project I'm aiming to do is the fact that people speak about whatever their struggles are, and then someone else can see what that is visually and then relate to it and go, oh, I feel like that. And that's where the power comes in. So that's one of the aims I'm wanting to get, where people are speaking about things that are very personal to them, but there's a power drive behind it where it's like, you're speaking about something that's a negative in your life, but we're going to flip it and spin it into a positive where people can relate to it and people can say, you know, I feel the same. Soon as someone says that, it's almost like a big cure for you. It's almost like I'm not alone in feeling these dark thoughts that I might be feeling. And I feel like that's where the power comes in. But yeah, going back to people who don't know me, I feel like the ultimate thing with that is it's almost like when you speak to a counsellor. When you see a counsellor, you don't know who that counsellor is, as in personal, like a friend or anything like that. It's always a stranger, but they've got your interests at heart. I'm not a counsellor at all, but I feel like I've got good listening skills and I've got empathy for understanding what people might be going through. So I feel like that's kind of the strength of maybe not knowing the people who are getting involved.
And that's so unique, because you'd think it was the other way around. So you'd think you'd be able to open up to those close to you and maybe not be so vulnerable with strangers. But that's the opposite in both this project and what you mentioned about beyond this project. So when you go to talking therapies, you're talking to a stranger. And not to make generalizations, but it is probably more comfortable for people to open up and be vulnerable to that stranger. And I guess what you said is it's because the basis of that relationship is built on talking about mental health, both with your project and talking therapies, which basically translate to mental health is acceptable to talk about.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
It's almost a norm in these relationships. So I guess the question is, how do we make conversations around mental health the norm in maybe not our everyday relationships, but for those people who are close to us?
I feel like when I'm maybe having an off day or might be struggling or something like that, I think knowing the right people to speak to. And I remember hearing something just recently, and they were speaking about how when a person comes to speak to you about whatever they're going through, they might not want anyone to fix them. They might just want to speak, and that's it. And it's almost like they just want some ears to listen to what they've got to say. And I feel like you'll have an issue that might be kind of eating away at your mind. And when you talk about it, it makes it real almost. It's like it's in your head. But when you talk about it, it's almost a way of like offloading that weight that's there. Yeah. So sometimes when you speak to family members or friends, they might go, oh, you want to do this, you want to do that. And that's not really what you want. It's just all you want is someone just to listen to you and give you that time and be understanding and not be like, oh, you're an idiot, you are, or why'd you feel like that? Them kind of comments are just going to make you close up and make you come away from it and think, why did I bother? So I do think it's really good to speak to friends and family, but you have to choose the people to speak to. So definitely.
Yeah, I guess finding the right person is a challenge, because it's a bit of a game where you've got to figure out who is the right person, and that's why I always say it's not about just encouraging people to speak up about mental health. It's also about equipping people with the skills to navigate those conversations. Yeah. Because from, when people have bad experiences opening up about mental health, like you said, if you tell someone and they're just trying to fix you, they're trying to give you solutions, they think they know what's best, and oftentimes they are well-intentioned, but they're just not equipped to navigate those conversations. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed that clip, click here to get the full episode, and don't forget to subscribe.